And welcome everybody. Yes, you see that little red dot? It tells us we're live. Welcome everybody. It is Friday, January 17th, and I think it's the 17th. It's flown by. You're in Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs in Vermont. And we are meeting this morning with one of our strongest and most important pillars and partners in our work on this committee. And we welcome this morning the Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, that very pillar. Not sure which kind of a pillar it is, but it's certainly a strong one. And we, perhaps because we have two new members who are on time and here, we're going to begin just by reintroducing ourselves for everybody, and then I hope you'll introduce your team.
So I'm Tom Chittenden. I think we met up at UVM a few times. You have some connections there. And thank you for every time you come to those events. And I represent Chittenden Southeast, which is 11 communities, basically the south and east of Chittenden County.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor District, of which you're.
Good morning, Dave Weeks, Rutland County.
Nice to re-meet you all and to be here. It's great.
And great to have Rutland actually back on the committee. We've had Chittenden very well represented, but we have not had Rutland for a couple of years. So it's an area, a county in need, just like Windsor in many ways. So
Great to be here.
Madam Secretary, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Lindsay Curley. I'm the Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Thank you for having our team here today. I am very excited to share a bit about our agency and what we do in our agency. Today's presentation will provide an overview of the agency, as well as the departments within it and our efforts to support Vermont's economy, housing, and our communities. I've brought with me today, online, we have Commissioner Joan Goldstein, who leads the Department of Economic Development.
Oh, I see her in the corner.
Hey.
We're missing you.
Yes. And the Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing, Heather Pelham, is in the room. The Commissioner of Housing and Community Development, Alex Farrell, is in the room. I also want to introduce to you Hazel Brewster. She is ACCD's legislative aide, but also the communications director at the Department of Economic Development. Here, Hazel. And virtually joining us is Jess Vintner, who is the legislative and policy director for the agency.
I don't see Jess, but hi, Jess.
Okay, she is running the slideshow, and yeah, so she's with us as well. So, like I said, I'll try to keep this very high level. You'll hear a little more detail from our leadership team. With that being said, if you have questions, feel free to interrupt me as I go, or you can wait to the end. Sometimes I talk fast, so it's a little hard to interrupt me, but just give me a wait. So our mission, ACCD, helps Vermonters improve their quality of life by building strong communities. And the mission truly drives all of the agency's work across our economic, housing and tourism activities. And creating that mission, our goal was to align Vermont's broader goals for growth, sustainability, and community resilience. I know you hear the governor talk often about growing the economy, making Vermont more affordable, and protecting the vulnerable. So everything we do in our agency, we align for that. That is our North Star. Our three departments at the agency, as I mentioned, Department of Economic Development, Housing and Community Development, and Tourism and Marketing. I love to say we are small but mighty, and we punch above our weight. We have we hover right around 100 employees in our agency, which makes us, if not the smallest agency in state government, we are the smallest. I included the organizational chart as well. You'll see, along with the three departments, that we have a few other entities and divisions that work along with us. On the chart, you'll see the Vermont Economic Progress Council, which we call VEPC. VEPC is an independent public body that's made up of 11 appointed members. 2 are lawmakers, 9 are citizens. And the way I like to describe this is VEPC is like a dotted line to the Department of Economic Development. And essentially the reason for that is that we provide administrative support to that council. That the role of that council is to approve or deny applications for the Vermont Employment Growth Initiative, Incentive, VEGI, and the tax increment financing programs. So, and both of those are designed to support and stimulate economic growth for our state. Let's see what else. I think you'll probably have Jess Hartleben, who's the executive director, in at some point to
We will
talk about
indeed.
those programs. Okay, perfect. And Joan may touch upon them as well. I wanted to highlight the Division for Historic Preservation, which falls under DHCD, and Alex may touch upon these as well, but sometimes people kind of gloss over them, but they promote Vermont's rich historical heritage. Good morning. Good morning, Senator. How are you? Oh, wait. The Division for Historic Preservation, as I mentioned, they ensure that our rich historical heritage remains an integral part of Vermont's identity in the future. And I think kind of an interesting thing is that folks don't know that in our agency, we own historic buildings and structures that are valued at over $90 million. And so we caretake those and we manage those. And in 2024, we saw a record number of visitors to our sites, which was 78,000 visitors. In tourism and marketing department, you'll see where the chief marketing office is housed. And you will also hear more about that from Commissioner Pelham. In the next three slides, they have staff numbers as well as information about our departments. I want to talk a little bit about housing and affordability, and Alex is going to dive more deep into the housing, but because housing and affordability is economic development, I wanted to just touch on these a little bit. These are not just social issues, they're critical components of economic development. You know, without affordable and accessible housing, Vermont can't attract or retain the workforce that we need to grow our economy. Businesses depend on these employees to live within a reasonable distance in their communities, and as well as it makes the communities thrive and grow. And we hear so often from employers, and I'm sure you hear it as well, that they struggle to, they'll be recruiting, and then they'll, arguably almost land the recruit, and inevitably somebody will say, I can't find housing for myself or my family, and they will lose the recruit to a business outside the state. And so we're really working hard to stop that and to make sure that we have a housing portfolio that meets the needs of all Vermonters, so that we can help our businesses also meet their own economic growth objectives. Let's see what else I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. By attracting more people, particularly working age adults and families, we not only address the state's demographic challenges, but we also generate the economic momentum we need to build more housing. A growing population strengthens our tax base, creates a demand for new development, and supports the workforce needed to actually construct the new homes and maintain vibrant communities. Good morning, Senator. Focusing on these goals together, meaning not just leaving it within the one Department of Housing, allows us to strike a balance. So we're working on it across our agency to try to help each other solve the housing challenges. Some of our goals, as I mentioned, expanding the tax base, more people living and working Vermont means higher tax revenues to support critical services. We want to raise wages by fostering the sectors that create high-paying jobs. We can improve the financial stability of Vermonters, and increasing the housing stock. Addressing the current shortfall ensures we meet the needs of today's workforce, but also the future generations. So with that in mind, I've provided some data that illustrates the challenges and opportunities in addressing Vermont's affordability and housing needs. I will present these data points at a very high level, and I'll let Commissioner Goldstein and Commissioner Farrell expand further in their when they present.
And just for committee's reference, we're going to be hearing from JFO, who've done a deep dive on the demographics next week.
Perfect. Okay, that's great.
A constant challenge.
You've heard Governor Scott say again and again that demographics are a problem. He just mentioned in his inaugural address last week that from 2010 to 2022, the number of Vermonters between the age of 40 and 54 shrank by 28,000 people. That is the prime working age. So we need to keep Vermonters, but we also need to recruit new ones. So let's keep the ones we have and let's recruit new ones. The affordability crisis is the result of two things: high prices and the struggle to pay them. The struggle is reflected here when we look at how much Vermonters earn. And this I find shocking, but we have looked at these numbers over and over. The 2023 W-2 data from the Vermont Department of Taxes, as you can see, 66% of Vermonters earn $50,000 a year or less. About a quarter earn between $50,000 and $100,000, and just 8% make more than $100,000. So it's really hard to afford Vermont on $50,000 a year or less. And that's what we're asking 2/3 of Vermonters to do. So we really do need, oh yeah.
That says though, W-2 data alone, is that correct?
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily represent what people earn, does it?
Well, Commissioner Goldstein may be on it to be able to talk about this a little bit, but I'm gonna maybe try to read your mind a little bit on this. We do have a gig economy, right? So we have some challenges in getting a full report out as to what people are making. But Commissioner Goldstein,
Yeah.
do you have any additional
Sure,
data?
I could address it a little bit. We understand this is W-2 data, so understood that there are people who may have more than one job.
Joan, you want to sign into the record here?
Sorry, for the record, Joan Goldstein, Commissioner of Department of Economic Development. We understand that this is just W-2 data, right? So there may be other earnings. We get that. But it just as an example of the types of jobs that people are holding, they're not necessarily high-paying jobs. And this is sort of our star. Like, we have to change the components of this pie. We have to move these pie slices, right? People can't take care of themselves on $50,000 a year, let alone buy a house. So yes, we need to increase the supply of housing, but we have to try our best to continue to attract and create the jobs that are higher paying. I mean, this is just, to your point, Senator Brock, we did another look at kind of on the income level, and it's still not a pretty picture. It's about 50% on income are making less than making $50,000 or less. So it's still not a good picture.
Thank you. We have talked, and it's a priority of some members of this committee to address wage growth. And so we're very good on wage growth.
Yeah.
Well,
Particularly for
yeah,
like
and
also-
we do hear, like, why are we incentivizing?
You're very much going to take this on.
We do hear that why are we incentivizing job growth and why are we incentivizing businesses to create jobs when we're at full employment? But the issue is, yes, we may be fully employed. We're just not fully employed in high-paying occupations. And so that's something that we want to impart and make sure that everyone remembers this, that yes, our unemployment rate is low. It doesn't mean we should stop creating new job opportunities where people could, elevate themselves.
Yeah, Joan, we're trying to fix your volume here so that we can actually hear you, because I didn't mean to interrupt you, as you know. But David pointed out that you were still talking, but we couldn't hear you. Yeah, Keisha.
So we rarely have all of you in the room at the same time. That's wonderful. And we know this is a really interconnected problem of housing, affordability.
Right.
One of the things that it's hard to talk about, but I feel like, people like Commissioner Farrell and I are at the age where it's a really critical part of the conversation, is that one of the best ways for people to economically survive and thrive is going to be partnering. It's going to be living with somebody that's maybe someone they care about, hopefully.
Right.
And I think that's an economic reality, that marriage and partnership create economic stability. And we know that there are actual wealth building tools that help people think about marriage or think about lifetime partnership, like owning a car. If you own a car, you're 50% more likely to marry someone because you have reliable transportation. You can go pick them up. They see you as, you know, someone who's stable and makes car payments, etc. Bear with me here because we're looking at the basic needs budget, right? And to go from being a single person living with roommates and paying for your housing to a 2-person, 2-child household is this incredible economic leap. One of the ways that I think we're going to need to look at the social side of economic growth is large multifamily apartment style housing. I mean, you would have architects who say, if you're investing in a stairwell and an elevator, then you're checking on your neighbors, you're meeting someone in the hallway, you're actually interacting with someone. And that's like a reality that you have to think about in a rural place. I guess that's leading me to, we have a lot of large state buildings that are like going to be more and more underutilized or warehoused. Can ACCD create some kind of demonstration conversion project that's flood resilient and, you know, you already have the elevators, the stairwell, this is how we need to think, you know, who has large buildings in the state? Not very many people, not very many landholders. So I guess when I look at this, I just see, yeah, the only way people are going to survive this is having another person in their household who makes the same amount. And that's kind of the only way we've ever done well as a country is families.
Yeah, I would also, I mean, I think BGS is looking at some of that as well. So I also would say, personally speaking, that there have been generations or decades where multi-generations have lived in one household.
Yes.
And we moved away from that.
Right.
And I think you're seeing, one of the things that I was going to talk about is that we're not taking our foot off the gas in terms of trying to bring people here while we're trying to bring housing online. And some people are kind of questioning us about that.
Yes.
And where we are at is like, some people may have to double up for a while.
Listen, I have 7 people
Right.
and 2 dogs in my house right now while my parents moved into their house. So I
right.
hear you.
So, you know, it's like we may have to double up and figure this out for a while because we can't stop filling vacancies while we're building. I have a lot of slides actually on housing, and I really want to leave that to Alex. I don't want to go too far in. He's going to talk about the housing needs assessment. And, but at the end of the day, I think, you know, what I really want to get across here is that the mismatch of, you know, the expense of trying to own a home and what, you know, Vermonters are making on average is just not aligning. Just maybe if you could go to slide 12, I'll just kind of, you know, wrap here, but, here, on slide 12, what we're looking at is the high cost of housing in Vermont and the ability to pay for it. So basically, we just talked about like if, you know, if we have folks that are in, if you look at the median listing for a home in Chittenden County, it's $590,000, which is the highest in the state. And the lowest was Essex County, where it's $320,000. If you look at the median family income in Chittenden County, it was $76,000. This is in 2023. In Essex County, it's $47,000. And if you use VHFA's affordability calculation, Essex County was the only county in the state in Vermont where a family earning the median income could afford a median priced home. So that's pretty crushing. One county. And there's such an imbalance. So
And compared to other states, that is significantly higher than many average home prices, even in Essex County than many states.
Absolutely. So, and you know, if you look at the interest rates currently and you plug in $320,000, it's a pretty large mortgage payment. So, you know, we talk about, you know, the expense of childcare and all these things. And, you know, I know as a mother of 3, you know, the people that my children are a little older now, but the people that spend a lot of time with my children during the day, you might feel much better about spending money on the people who are spending so much time influencing your children all day long. If you weren't so overtaxed, when I say overtaxed, spending more than 30% of your income on your housing. And that's what's happening is a significant number of Vermonters are spending far beyond 30% of their income on their housing. And so that's got to change so that people have the money to have a car and have childcare and buy their groceries. So anyway, these are all things that we're working on in our agency. And I want to turn it over because I know we're limited on time as well this morning, so you can hear from our leadership team. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Pelham. You're next.
First, okay.
Yes.
Great. And I just want to clarify with Heidi. Heidi, is this?
Oh, I apologize. I had it wrong. It's going to be Joe next, but.
Okay, Joe next. Do we have this? Because this slide deck is a little different as to what you had printed out. All the charts and stuff I don't. I have. And so is this going to be on our website too?
Yes, it's already up on the website.
I also jumped the gun here and assumed there were no more questions because we talked through, but if there are questions for me now, we can do that, or we can keep rolling and.
I would encourage us to keep
Okay.
rolling if we can, although everybody should feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, I'll stay in the room. So we'll turn it over to Commissioner Goldstein and then I'll still be here. So,
No, you're good. You're good.
So here is what.
Joan, you got the floor.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I am struck by Senator Ram Hinsdale comment about stability and building stability, about the pairing up and how do you get from being single and living, with roommates to going into a home that you own with a family. And I think it speaks to the need for financial literacy. I mean, I think that is an issue. Like, what does it take to really earn a living that affords you the ability to buy a house? Like, when should young students learn this so that they could plan their futures? And so just a bit of a digression from my planned presentation, but I am struck by it because I think it's an important feature.
Yeah.
So we're a department of 28. It's myself and Deputy Commissioner Brett Long. At the sort of leadership level, we have 28, but 5 of those are limited service positions that were granted as per the ARPA funding. That's the Rescue Plan Act funding that we worked on over the last several years with COVID recovery, and that we still have a long tail of monitoring. So I just wanted to bring that out. Is the volume better?
Yes, it's much better.
Okay.
We've had
Okay, good.
three.
So as Secretary Curley said, that really the overarching mission is to improve the well-being of Vermonters, and it's all about growth, opportunity, and innovation. So our work connects businesses and organizations to resources, including financing, workforce development, market expansion, with the goal of continuing to cultivate high-quality jobs and expanding the state's tax base. This is the same slide. Again, we use this really as our guide because when we think about affordability, this really tells the story, and it is stunning. I really had, before we did this, I had no idea so few people were earning, over $100,000 in the state. And yeah, unless you pair up or have several jobs, it's really hard to survive on some basic level. So our goal is to change the composition of this pie.
Joan, I just interrupt to say we, as Keisha had mentioned earlier, we just did hear the basic needs budget with the projected livable wage as a result, and connecting these two pieces is important. I urge you to take a peek at the JFO's work. That report just came out on Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll do, and I think we peg our wage on Vermont Training Program to that, so we are definitely going to be on that. So, yeah.
I would add something to be meaningful in this area to do comparisons. The comparison ought to also be done with the adjusted gross income. Because as you mentioned, people are working different jobs, and so the income that a family receives is not necessarily the W-2 income of an individual. How much that across the state of people who do odd jobs, who do second jobs, who do capital gains income or other kinds of income, who sell the deer camp each year, and a certain number of people do that. What is the adjusted gross income in Vermont by category is also a useful figure to use to understand what's really going on.
And we will look at that as well.
W-2 is not specific.
Right.
That is correct, and we do have a chart that we could share at another time, but this is specifically to think about what the workforce is earning. The two drivers really of what when we think about policy and what we should be doing is really about grandless growth and business growth. Grandless growth, of course, increases the property tax base. We need to generate more revenue without raising taxes. Funding essential services, it's really foundational. That is our goal. That is the premise behind the tax incrementing financing districts. That is the premise of some of the other funding opportunities that we work on, and it really is a driver. There are many, many towns that don't have adequate infrastructure, so we need to ensure that we're able to help that along so that housing could be built, commercial development, all of it works in tandem. Business growth. Yeah.
Joe, you got a question? Tom.
Commissioner Goldstein, it's good to see you. And I love seeing this grandless growth and business growth as an objective. One thing that's going to be top of my mind in Senate Finance this year is concerns I've had with our current education funding formula. And bear with me, I want to make the connection to grandless growth and business growth. We've seen multiple times, both here in Vermont and elsewhere, where development patterns for both business development as well as housing often reflect our regulatory environment, both intended and unintended effects. You could look at the 10-acre rule to Act 250, you look at the windows taxes back in medieval Europe, or the Proposition 13 in California, but people reflect and respond to the regulatory environment and how they grow their business as well as housing. I am under the impression from my travels here in Montpelier and on the South Burlington City Council that since Act 60 was put in place in the 90s, that the formula now has gradually over time, but effectively disincentivized growth at the local level, because prior to Act 60, this is what I hear from friends that served in the 80s and 90s, that if you want to build a new high school in a community, you would open up new business growth. You'd rezone an area, or you'd encourage some additional property to draw on more taxes to pay down the rates for the existing homeowners to pay for that new high school. So it would incentivize growth. Whereas Act 60, now we pool all the money and you don't necessarily reap the benefit of lower property taxes than your education spending, because it's now an entire statewide formula that's been calculated, so that you can have communities that don't see a direct benefit by lowering their taxes or lowering their property tax burden by enhancing the grand list in their communities. So I'm really optimistic that an education fund formula change might correct that. And we might have communities have some, not direct in entirety, but some benefit when they allow for growth in their communities. Similarly, on this topic, and I put this out here only to connect our economic objectives and our housing objectives to the education funding formula, which is going to be a big topic this session. I also think there's merit to explore what Senator Ron Hinsdale was just talking about a property tax credit. Currently, we give it out and it has inconsistency in who really earns it. But a notion that is important to keep in mind is the ratio of number of residents to square footage of living space. Mm-hmm. So what Senator Ron Hinsdale was just talking about, she has 7 people, and I don't know how large her home is, but 7 people in a 3,000 square foot home is more effectively housing people than 2 people in a 5,000 square foot home.
It's like the farmhouse style.
Correct.
Yeah.
But our current property tax credit is inconsiderate of that type of tax incented shared living. So I think there's a merit to considering how we harvest and collect information about the number of residents or occupancy in our declared homesteads relative to the living square footage when it comes to incentives like the property tax credit. So those are 2 things I'm going to continue to put on the table this session, and I'd love to hear more of your thoughts in this community if it intersects with some of your objectives.
Joan, we're making you work hard for your money this morning. And also, I would like to know more one day, maybe, about the medieval window.
They tax based on how many windows there were, so people just started having less windows.
Oh, right.
Exactly. There are a couple other ideas about grandless growth. So Joan, it's back to you.
Yeah, no doubt. What Senator Chittenden just brought up makes things more complex in the calculus about growth in a particular community. Although having said that, the communities that want growth. Like they're not necessarily turning it away because of the formula. Having said all of that, we just had Tax Department do a look back of grandless growth over the last 15 years, and it looked like, I don't know, maybe 198 towns had grandless growth of less than 1%. So we still have a significant problem with just, we don't have enough creation of additional tax-bearing property to help pay the bills, right? So this is why, you know, you might have heard the governor refer to a creative twist on TIF, and we're going to be happy to talk about that, probably not today, but as a way to incentivize additional development.
More to follow on
Yeah,
all
yeah,
aspects.
yeah. This is just, you know, the beautiful virtuous cycle of infrastructure investment. Really, we need it, enabling rural areas to respond to housing and population growth as well as supporting business growth. And then what is that? What happens after that? Local businesses and housing, generating more revenue, creating opportunities, population growth, brand list growth. Again, it's just this virtuous cycle, and that's what we are. Yeah, this is what we are trying to create. It's very difficult to create a housing development without the basic infrastructure. It's impossible. We can't create further industrial facilities without the infrastructure to handle it. We know of towns that want to do something, either a housing development or an industrial park, but they're going to need basic infrastructure. So this is where TIF is an important tool for us to continue to promote and not limit quite as severely as we have in the past.
And brownfield remediation.
Of course, brownfields, we love brownfields remediation. This is just a list of buzzwords for those, we do talk in acronyms, VEPSI, TIF, VEGI, you know, these are all things that we are involved with, right? It's about creating the jobs. It's about incentivizing that growth. It's about making sure there's infrastructure for development. Community development, we're involved in with our sister department, DHCD. All of the ARPA money that we had on the Community Recovery and Revitalization Program led to over 150 projects all around the state. So we're very involved in that. International trade is a way for businesses to expand their revenue base, and we have federal money that helps us with that. Tech commercialization is a way to create new entities, and that is an important way of creating jobs. It's not just expansion or relocation of business, but actually creation of new business from some innovative ideas and IP that come out of the university, and entrepreneurship, of course. Our partners, we don't do everything alone from Montpelier. Obviously, the regional development corporations play an important role. They are the eyes and ears, the foot soldiers, if you will, throughout the regions, have the close relationships with the businesses and community organizations. The regional planning commissions and local chambers play a role. Of course, VITA, most important partner in terms of financing the growth necessary with a variety of their programs. SBA, of course, on the federal side, SBDC for business counseling, and the Northern Border Regional Commission. This is money that we get from the feds every year to help fund infrastructure. And we don't administer it, but we do prioritize the projects. And NBRC does all of the admin around that. And of course, the federal EDA programs. We'll be interacting with you, obviously, all session, but we also interact with the House Commerce and Community Development, Ways and Means, Finance, and Senate Appropriations, of course. And we might hear us talking about CRRP, that's Community Recovery and Revitalization. We were appropriated $50 million over the last several years to fund projects spurring economic recovery and revitalization all over the state. We do have an infographic on our site. You could see about the projects that we did fund all over the state. And we're currently still involved in BGAP, which is the Business Emergency Cap Assistance Program, which is for the flood victims, businesses and nonprofits that suffered physical damages from the flooding events, both in 23 and 24. And we still are processing those from the last flood. Brownfield Revitalization Fund, as Senator Clarkson has mentioned. We typically were going after federal money for this, but Over the last several years, I think from 21, we asked for state funding for a little bit more flexibility, both in terms of who the grantees were, as well as the amounts that we could give to this. And we have funded, kind of leveraged over 300 million in private investment for this. So this helps with housing unit creation, job creation. It takes idle properties, things that people don't want to touch, and convert it into productive capacity. So we're very proud of the work on the Brownfields Revitalization Fund, and that is ongoing. And the Vermont Training Program, of course, we fund up to 50% of the cost of training, whether that's vendor created or provided, or on the job training. And there's a Vermont Training Program report on our website. You could see precisely who got the funds and what the wage growth was with those that were trained versus the wage growth in the state overall. STEP funding I referred to earlier is the federal. It helps businesses attend trade shows. So if they want to expand their markets, these are expensive shows to attend. So for a small business, paying for that is really, really helpful. But it also helps for like translation services, market support. I mean, it's very complex as you sell into each market. They all have their own rules and regs. So we do hire some consultants to help businesses navigate the complexity around that. And that's been a successful program that we apply each and every year for the federal funding. Apex Accelerator, you might have known, or earlier was referred to as Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And that's what they do. They help small businesses procure government contracts. That's whether it's local, state, or federal contracts. This is primarily funded by the feds, and the state provides a match, but it enables us to have local counselors that reside at the Regional Development Corporation office to help businesses navigate. It's very complex. The federal government is a great client to have for a small business. It's just really difficult to get to that point, and these folks help the businesses get it. We've been very successful.
Joe, may I just interrupt to ask, do we have local counselors in every one of our RDCs?
Not everyone. We have Springfield, Rutland, Burlington, Montpelier, and the St. J person does St. J and Newport. So it's regionally directed. The Springfield person takes care of Windsor and Wyndham as an example, and St. J does the entire Northeast Kingdom. Burlington covers Burlington, and Rutland covers Rutland and Addison.
And they've been embedded for how long with our RDC?
Oh, I can't even remember. I mean, as long as I've been up here, since I started in Vermont as a small business development advisor, Apex Accelerator was there. So you're talking probably, I don't know, probably 30 years or something like that.
No, I hadn't fully appreciated that we had them embedded. And when we look at return on investment, I'm just at some other point, I'd love to know how successful they are in those RDC areas, actually generating the grants and what we're looking at. So it would be great to have more of an update on this, because we actually haven't spent much time on this piece in this committee. Thanks.
I will.
Yeah, more to follow.
Yeah, I'll be able to get that for you. Just see if I have something handy. I don't think I have it broken down by region, but as an example.
Don't worry about it for now. But I think as we look at federal money perhaps being constrained under the next administration, that, that's the kind of thing we've grown to rely on. And if that, it's like, how are we going to replace that if that is no longer funded?
Yeah,
we're
not sure how. Yeah, we're not sure how it will go. It's a Department of Defense funded operation. The awards were 282 million, 241 Vermont companies were assisted that received awards. So it's a very good ROI.
Yeah, it's a big bang for the buck.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, I didn't mean to just wanted to put a
It's
pin in
okay.
that.
I'm just running through all the programs. Northern Border Regional Commission, as I said, I mean, they've invested in economic and infrastructure projects in Vermont, all of the 14 counties. And we're typically getting that every year. We don't know what the future brings, but these are excellent opportunities for infrastructure funding. BIPOC Business and Career Assistance Program, we've contracted with the Vermont Professionals of Color Network to provide delivery of business coaching and other forms of training at no cost to business or individuals. And we're also responsible for the cannabis business development funding. We are forwarded folks from the Cannabis Control Board to help fund social equity applicants with beneficiary payments. And we've been doing that for a couple of years now. Just some highlights for CRRP, that's the 50 million of ARPA funding, 155 projects. The 19.2 million of state brownfields funding leveraged 389 million of private development funds. All of the exports of Vermont are 16.2 billion. That's for 4 years. And on the veggie program over the years since its inception, there have been 1.1 billion of qualifying capital investments from that program. And over the years, since fiscal year 17, 14,775 workers were trained via the Vermont Training Program. More infographics for you. These are on our website, but we have for the Brownfields Redevelopment Fund, we assisted 42 projects, which is great. Jobs and housing units. You see all of the information up there. Vermont Training Program as well as the Community Recovery and the Capital Investment Program. Those were the ARPA funded projects, capital investment projects.
Right.
That's it. And you've met Hazel and you know Jess, and Nita is our scheduler. So keep in touch. I'm sure I'll be back, and thank you for the time. Thank
you for teeing us up. And I think Keisha has a question, and then we're going to move to the next person.
Joan, I mean, thank you. And it was actually, it was small, but it was helpful to see at the end the number of acres redeveloped, et cetera. As we look at the cost per acre for brownfields revitalization, I'm always curious, like cost per unit of housing, if there are reasons that we are making this more expensive. Urban Soils comes to mind, which some of our housing providers have asked us to look at. You know, you are in charge of large scale projects where you are hopefully coordinating with A&R, but also seeing what, you know, the average land owner developer goes through. And I'd love for us to have feedback from ACCD on how A&R could be a better steward of public dollars and help us meet our economic goals.
So that's a great question. Thank you for that. A&R, just to be clear, A&R is a partner in this Brownfields Revitalization Fund. We don't work independently. They are the regulator. They're the ones who approve the corrective action plan. The corrective action plan actually puts things in motion for us to start the remediation. It also quantifies what it's going to cost. Now, the cost is not necessarily determined by A&R. It's really the engineering consultants that do the corrective action plan. So, so here's an example. Some projects we worked on, the cost went up tenfold. And why did that happen? Well, PFAS was discovered in a water system. So there are things, you know, I would love to do a deeper dive into that to find out, but basically without the brownfields help, you just know that the projects would not get done. It would not make economic sense just because of these contaminants are things that have to be remediated and mitigated so not to harm human health. So yeah, it's not so much about being more proficient. It's really, these are expensive chemicals to go in. Dirty dirt is also very, very expensive and difficult. It's about the transport.
Right. And as you know, in Windsor, we've had to spend $1 million to just get rid of dirt to build an affordable housing right in the center of town. I think we're going to be discussing this more because
Right,
I
because
think
the
it's,
reality is you don't get rid of the dirt.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I think that's where I'd love for us to be
Right.
having a really deep dive on
Yeah.
what is actually helping the environment and what is instead inhibiting economic growth.
Right. So let's put a pin in that one too, because I think that's a bigger conversation and it also it's competing goods because brownfields also enable whole swaths of land, particularly in Springfield, that will be able to be redeveloped as a result of this work. So until then, it's sort of contaminated and unusable. So who is going to, thank you, Joan. This was terrific. Great tee up.
Thanks.
Alex,
Am I
next.
next? Okay. Oh, that's great.
Well, I don't know who's next, but we're happy to take
Oh, it
it.
is. It's me. Great. All right. I'm going to be brief so that we have time for Heather.
And we will see a lot more of you.
You'll see plenty of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you're excited. Morning, Madam Chair.
We're excited by your subject. And right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Alex Farrell, Commissioner at the Department of Housing and Community Development. So like I said, I'll keep today somewhat brief because I want to give you all an intro as to who we are, who's in the department, and some of the things we do. You're going to note that I passed out a little packet for you all. So since I'm going to be moving quickly, it's okay. We have a lot of data about
Which
the
one?
programs. It looks like this.
Okay.
And so probably the top one that
Oh,
you
you
see
have
is
that.
downtown.
I have one.
Um,
And is Jess keying you up on this?
Oh, here it is.
I think we can see the org chart right now, just so you know. I like to point out the 4 divisions within our department because folks might forget about, as Secretary Curley mentioned, the Division for Historic Preservation and our state historic sites, which by the way had a record year in terms of revenue and attendance. So don't forget about
Which
that.
is very exciting.
Very exciting. And so, all right, as we move on beyond that, it's just going to touch a bit more on who we are in the department. I want you to see the leadership team here. This is going to be for your reference since you have these slides, but I just want you to know as you hear from our department, as you want to reach out to us, these are the folks that are really leading the team here. So myself and Deputy Commissioner Formulari, and then the heads of our 4 divisions. You will also likely see General Counsel Max Krieger in here, who is madly working to wrap up the final touches on our omnibus housing bill as we speak. And so you're going to see Max in here a little bit as well.
And you will, just out of curiosity, as we schedule into the next few weeks, when might that omnibus set of priorities be ready for presentation?
Good transition, Madam Chair. So probably Tuesday, you ought to expect to hear an announcement of the omnibus housing bill.
Is it Tuesday or following Tuesday?
It'll be on Tuesday that we announce it. It will not be introduced on Tuesday. It'll likely be introduced later in the week.
And
But
so could we just be in touch with when the appropriate time is for you to come back?
I think, yeah, I could be in touch with you.
I think that would be
You
good.
can be the first to hear from me.
We would love to be able to beat the house on this one. Because we beat us on so many other fronts getting you guys.
Not
Okay.
this year. Okay, so
Of course, it's not a competition.
no, naturally. So what you see above me is our mission, and I'm not going to read it to you. But by the way, if you're impressed by my PowerPoint skills, you can thank Professor Chittenden.
This is how he's moonlighting?
So
Okay.
10 years ago, anyway.
Sometime.
But the mission and the buzzwords, I want you to just have so that you're thinking about all the things that we do, because of course we're going to talk about housing and the number of units that we need, and there's going to be some data being released on that, but we're also really focused on revitalizing our communities. And so we try to take a really balanced approach to our strategy, not just to the housing crisis, but also to community development. And Maura has some really great talking points on this that I'm sure you'll hear, but when we're looking at a housing project, it's achieving multiple objectives oftentimes, especially in our rural downtowns and village centers. And so these buzzwords are really just for you to make sure you think of us. Madam Chair, I think you might have been the one a while back to point out that we have too many pictures of downtown Bristol in our
Correct.
slide decks, but this is a holdover, and I
You
still
know,
like the
White River
platform.
could benefit.
I know.
Some parts of Rutland that would benefit.
I love to brag about Bellows
St.
Falls.
Albans,
I know, absolutely.
Bellows Falls.
We have some incredible success stories. This is a great side by side because it shows the same block, and
That's why you like it. So
We-
it's up to us to find the parallel photographs in our communities.
I'm going to challenge the team to find some great parallel photos. But what this illustrates is just the point I was making about the effort that it takes a community to really utilize the tools that we make available to transform a community. And notice while the structures look great in this photo from the 1980s until 2018 here, what you really notice is a thriving downtown where there are people. And so we have programs not just to update the structures, but to bring community to these places, like our Better Places program. So
Which we love.
again, this major partners slide, I think I just want you to have this so that when you hear people talk about the regional planning commissions, Champlain Housing Trust, Vermont Housing Finance Agency, Vermont State Housing Authority, you know these are partners of ours that are helping us to execute our mission, and oftentimes they're the boots on the ground informing us. You're also going to see the committees that we're in, often in here, as well as your counterparts in the House, as well as the Natural Resources Committee. So
Yeah.
that's going to hold true this year as well. Now, the program spotlights, I am going to refer you to this packet because I don't want to take too much time walking through these. So you've got the definitions in the slides, and you've got plenty of information in this packet here about many of our programs. So I'm going to go down to the Homes for All toolkit.
But before you leave that slide,
Please.
given that it's a priority of at least, I mean, a top priority of this committee is to leverage our state dollars into incredibly successful and productive projects and investments. I just want to point out, because Joan pointed out one of our investments in brownfields has generated, except 19 million produces 380 million of investment. Our downtown and village tax credits are one of our most successful investments in terms of what it leverages. I think it's 17, David and Randy, it's 17-1, I believe, roughly.
That's right. So you have a little one pager here that talks about it. And from 21 to 25, we awarded 21 million in tax credits, but that leveraged almost 700 million in the private investment. This is an incredibly powerful program that has been very, very successful.
And we hope that the governor's budget will reflect its importance and increase its.
I hope you aren't surprised to hear that we'll likely be asking for an increase again.
This is very good.
From 3 back up to 5 as it was during the pandemic, because that was far better meeting the needs and the demand of that communities.
And as we talk about infrastructure, one of our key infrastructure investments, I mean, that leverages a lot of infrastructure. This tax credit.
It really is, and the program I won't dive into, but which pairs nicely with that, is the Downtown Transportation Fund, which you see on that slide, but you also have a one pager that dives into details about that. Now, I do want to talk and brag a little bit about Homes for All. So I'm holding right now our toolkit, and the goal of this program, which started with the toolkit, but which will be followed up with future phases, is to bring more Vermonters into home building and development. So we're focusing, starting with this, on small scale infill development. So think 1 to 4 units, could be an ADU, could be a 4-unit building. These designs are based on homes throughout Vermont, historical homes throughout Vermont. So they're intended to blend into our downtowns and village centers. And this is a guide. If you're not a home builder, Senator Brock could go and build a 1 to 4 unit building. And this will soon be followed up, hopefully this coming year, with a training cohort where folks who are aspiring home builders or small scale developers will go through some training to.
And how do regular folks procure a copy of that?
This is on our website, and in one of the handouts that will be posted to the website that is in your packet here, there's a link to where you can find it on our
And
website.
you could buy it.
Don't even have to buy it. You
Well,
can
but
just-
I mean, if you want it in a book form.
If you want it in a book form, you can call me and I'll hand it to you. We don't have a ton of copies, but I can bring a few that you all can have yourselves.
Okay, sure.
I will just highlight that I eventually like to see this or something like it as what is essentially by right
That's right.
development. That if you follow these blueprints more or less, you can do this by right.
Yeah.
There is no one that can appeal that.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah.
And that is the goal of one of our later phases. Right now, our plan is once we get sort of this training cohort going, we also want to start working with municipalities to have pre-approved designs. So basically, you can choose from a slate, and that is yours by right.
Which will fit into our modular unit investments when we get to that.
And
which
to
we
go
hope
more
is.
than 4 units.
That's right.
David.
So I'm learning to pay attention to guys now, and I'm wondering if you can explain the nuance of buy right, what's that?
Well, Senator Brock,
question?
might want to as well. I mean, anything that can be appealed can take another 6 months to forever to build. And by right are provisions we've put in for duplexes, quadplexes in certain areas, and ADUs, such that it cannot be appealed. It is your right to create that type of housing. And
Public hearing.
right, and then still like to make sure there are no municipalities that are messing with that by right.
Is there a potential zoning friction?
There is a service. I mean, they have to be, some of them have to have water and sewer. I mean, there are some conditions.
It has to be in a certain area.
Yeah, so that's right. So that's some of the work this committee did on the Home Act a couple years ago.
Exactly.
Established some certain zoning standards for that area served by water and wastewater, certain density standards. So that put certain guardrails around what municipalities can restrict in terms of zoning. And that 1 to 4 unit is one of the things that we're sort of sticking to because that was safely within the Home Act.
But our intent is that duplexes and ADUs are by right across the state.
Right.
It also goes to the issue that I raised about some of my priorities about certainty. That if you do something in a certain way, then you have much greater certainty that you can actually do it instead of having to have it re-engineered and redesigned and read this and read that, which is one of the problems now that causes the time delay in getting anything done. Now, it perhaps doesn't go as far as I would go, but it goes a ways.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alex, cognizant of time.
Sure. So I'm going to move quickly since but I do want to come back and I want to talk about a few efforts. One which was led by Maura's team at VHFA, an offsite construction report, which was just released.
Yeah.
So hopefully folks saw that. On Monday, we're going to be publishing our housing targets, which is an annex to the housing needs assessment, which again was led by VHFA in partnership with our team and the RPCs, paired with those housing targets that you're going to see Monday or Tuesday. You're also going to see a new Housing in Vermont dashboard, which is going to work in coordination with housingdata.org. And this is going to be a very granular picture of where housing is being produced. I'm glad the VHIP slide is up because I want to talk about VHIP briefly before I step away. In your packet is fresh data, hot off the press as of last night. So it's slightly updated from this picture. I want to point out a few things about this data before I hand it over to my partner, Commissioner Pelham. Senator Weeks, I hope you're excited to see that the darkest blue county on this VHIP map is Rutland. There's a good reason for that. So VHIP is focused on repurposing structures and rehabbing, and Rutland, as we know, is a community with a lot of vacant structures that need that rehab and that reconfiguration. The second thing I want to point out, if you look at the slide and then the data in here, you'll notice the total number hasn't changed. While projects are moving through, they're getting developed, they're coming online, and in total, we're looking at about 1,000 units, which are 37 million invested. That's great. What you're seeing is VHIP's out of money. So there's not more units being added to that underway. So,
But I bet the governor's budget has taken that into consideration.
your intuition is so good, Madam Chair.
I just,
So I'll
and can I just point out that VHAP also for the new people in the committee also includes the money for ADUs.
It does. That's right. And commercial conversions. So smaller scale commercial conversions have been very successful with VHIP. While you can't do a large commercial building conversion, but Senator Ron Hinsdale, it's in our small downtowns and village centers, it has been successful converting some of those second, third floor office spaces into homes.
Keen to utilize.
I'm not going to spend time talking about the manufactured housing improvement repair program because I do want to pass off the mic, but please take a look at this. Again, oversubscribed. Expect to see this in our budget. And this has been incredibly impactful, and there's so much demand for our mobile home communities throughout the state that we really cannot keep up. So please take a look at the handouts, and I have a feeling I'll be back so we can dive into any of these a little bit more.
I think you'll be back.
Probably next week.
ASAP.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. This is terrific.
And I will let you all decide who gets to keep this.
Actually, may I make a request for one at some point to take to our housing whiz who was here the other day? Some of you met her, Trina.
Oh,
But
yeah.
some towns now have staff positions that are directly addressing housing.
I'll bring in a stack more.
That would be great.
Great, okay.
It's your baby.
Yeah,
You'll be able to.
Oh, I mean,
You'll be able to.
committee
Others,
copy. I'll
Okay. We can all
Want to
take a
look
peek.
at it.
Right. We have a library.
Yeah.
Started by you.
Be in the library.
Heather Powell, welcome.
I'm nothing wrong. Are we outside?
No, we have
Okay.
15 minutes.
Okay, excellent.
And I would just like to point out that your area of expertise is in fact a high priority for many people. on this
Excellent.
committee.
Excellent. Well, for the record, Heather Cullum, I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Forest and Marketing. Happy to give you a brief overview. I have a bunch of slides, but again, like with my colleagues, happy to come back again. So really briefly, we're a staff of 14. That includes 2 limited service positions that we will lose at the end of 2025. And it also includes 2 folks that are in our chief marketing office. So basically it's a core team of 10 to do the core of what we do, which is we go to our mission is really promoting the state, promoting the state for visitation, as well as promoting the state for relocation. So in terms of, again, I'm going to kind of go through quickly, happy to come back, talk about more, but you know, we basically have 4 main areas of work. So we have destination marketing, destination development, relocation work, and the chief marketing office. So the first of those, destination marketing, you know, we are out there with, you know, what we say about ourselves, own media, earned media, press, and paid media to make sure that folks keep Vermont top of mind. And I'm going to actually, if you want to go to the next slide, this is just an example of the type of work we do in destination marketing. These are some of the tactics that we use for our summer fall campaign. We are, you know, using every sort of modern form of communication there is. We are heavy into video because we have new videos we've been able to develop over the last couple of years. But I just showed the slide as kind of an example of the range of tactics that we use to get the word out about Vermont. We are looking mostly at brand awareness. We think of ourselves very much at the top of the funnel, introducing the idea of Vermont, and then where folks might decide to stay. You know, as they get farther down into that purchase funnel, we have more information on our website and so forth about all of our wonderful communities. What the targeting looks like is, you know, we do have some geographic targets. We do not have an unlimited budget. I know that's such a shock.
Perhaps you'd like to share with us what your budget is at the moment.
I'd be happy to. So we are historically, we've been about $3.5 million as our destination marketing budget. The department's budget has been raised thanks to the great work of this committee and others to include more money for relocation. But when we think about just destination marketing, 3.5 million compares. Just looking at our closest neighbors in New Hampshire, it's 10 million. In Maine, it is 17 million. So we definitely have a large part ahead of us in terms of keeping Vermont top of mind.
Yeah. Thank you for that aspect.
Yes. So next slide just kind of shows some examples of the types of creative work that we're doing. The 3 videos shown here, something that we were, it's just an example here in terms of we're talking about over 500,000 people are looking at these numbers are for videos that are over 3 minutes in length. So if you think about the time spent with the brand, we're really focusing on, you know, how can we really communicate the values of Vermont, the value proposition, like what it really means to come here on a very emotional level. And so some really great performance we'll be able to see out of that campaign. Again, I can go more into detail. This is just an example of another tactic for us. We do work with content creators, social media influencers, when we are looking at, you know, paying for someone to come in and what they're, you know, if we're gonna bring someone here, we are prioritizing working with content creators of color, looking at same-sex couples, looking at folks with disabilities, making sure that we are reaching networks that we might not otherwise be able to reach with basic behaviors marketing.
So these are global influencers that you're.
Yes, that we have
with.
worked
I
with,
just want
yes.
to follow them.
Yeah. I was trying to
please.
figure out who are these people? These are Vermonters? It doesn't look like.
They're not Vermonters. They are from all over the country. You can kind of see their self-described niche. We do work with an influencer agency to help us kind of vet people and make sure that we can get good return on investment for that kind of
That's
partnership.
right.
The EMV is earned media value.
Okay, Tom.
I feel like we should have Noah Kahn up there.
And we have, what's her name in Montpelier, who's a runner?
Myrna.
Myrna Sorvino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are actually,
No, what's her name?
Valerio.
Our rugby,
I was like, really? Yeah, no, I'm like.
and our rugby player.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ayana, yeah. So we
Yeah,
have
I
some
love that
wonderful
bar.
brand ambassadors that, you know, again, keep Vermont top of mind, which is wonderful for us. Then I just do have a couple slides in terms of winter. You know, we do not have a budget to be always on. We have more as, you know, all throughout the year, but basically we have a summer fall is May to October, then we do, we take a little bit of a break, and then we have November to March in terms of our winter campaign. So this is what we're looking at for tactics for winter. We shrink our markets just a little bit. Yes, folks can come here on an Icon or an Epic Path from out west, but we really concentrate more on our direct markets for winter. People are always looking at, the conditions and so forth. Thankfully, it's been a wonderful ski season so far. I heard that JP's had over 180 inches of snow so far this year, which is great. Again, just an example of tactics, and then the next slide shows some of the sample creative. We also have new video assets here. These just launched, so there's some preliminary performance data there in terms of what we're seeing for folks' interest. And we're really, again, leaning into, it's more about the culture of skiing. It's more about the culture of Vermont, what it means to come here, how our ski resorts are integrated into communities, more than it's just specifically about the one activity. What does that all add up to? Thankfully, we have new data to see what visitation in Vermont comes to, and happy to report 15.8 million visitors came to the state in 2023.
15.8?
15.8 million. Not a small number. I would encourage this committee, as we think about the work that we're doing and with our sister agencies, I like to think of visitors as temporary taxpayers. We are part of the revenue side of the equation that can help with all of the work that we are trying to accomplish. So great to see these numbers. You can see it's about split half and half between day and overnight visitors. Again, can you dive into all this more deeply?
But the most exciting thing about this is the last 2 years, the numbers are reaching our pre-pandemic numbers.
They are.
And that is really exciting.
It is very exciting. The slight dip from 2022, not sure if that, if we get the 24 numbers, don't know if that's a dip based on perhaps the flooding in 2023. Also, we did reach a peak post-pandemic. The pent-up demand has lessened a little bit.
Are you expecting an eclipse bump this year?
I don't know. I mean, it was we had a lot of people here. It was a wonderful, very brand positive event for us. Whether it was just one day, even though we had folks stay for the weekend.
Yeah, but they count.
Absolutely. Not sure yet if it will.
We've got a bill to do that again this year. So.
That's over 16.
We can move the heaven and the earth,
But it's helpful. I was at a lodging association meeting. I think you were there, I can't remember. And Columbus Day weekend, Indigenous People Day weekend is still a better economic return for the state than the eclipse was. So we don't have to just pray for an eclipse. We can continue to make our infrastructure available with hotels and good roads and
absolutely
marketing to people coming on special weekends.
Right. And I can show that slide on another time to talk.
But to add to that, to have those regularly now World Cup at Killington is now a regular big boost.
Yes. Yes.
So that kind of special event, which has now become a regular event, which is really great.
And so that's in the realm of destination development, which I'll get into in a little bit. But thinking about what are the visitor experiences that we can help create or support so that we have, a reason for folks to keep coming back. So what does that all add up to? Those 15.8 million visitors, they spend money here. $4 billion. Visitation is a $4 billion industry in the state of Vermont. 9.3% of our GDP. So you see, it's not just on lodging, it's really spread among the other sectors. So we're looking at food and beverage, retail, recreation support for all of our small businesses that are part of our visitor economy. And then I'm just reporting here the direct impacts. And this information came from an economic impact study that we are going to make available very shortly. So we also, if we look at the indirect and induced effects, then you're talking about 6.7 billion. Indirect being supply chain, induced being based on wages. But these are just the direct impacts I'm showing here on this slide. It includes $282 million in taxes. We think about what that is per Vermont household, over $1,000. If we did not have those visitors paying those taxes, be an additional 1,000 plus tax burden to each Vermont household. So just recognizing we are part of the revenue equation to make Vermont more important.
We are. And I would like to have you be in touch when that report is ready. And
yes,
have you
absolutely.
Come back and
I will be happy to dive into it. One of the nice things about what we're able to do is we also were able to have some information on the county level as well.
That's great. And when is that report finished?
We do have it finished. We just need to get the final touches on,
Okay.
the press release and so
Send
forth.
it to Heidi and to
Yes.
us, and then we'll have you.
And we did also publish an economic impact report specifically on the eclipse, which if you haven't seen that, that came out, I think, in October. We can also make sure that you folks have seen that as well.
We can touch on that.
Moving on to destination development. This is an area that the department really has not been able to do in the past, but thanks to funding that we received post-pandemic, but as part of ARPA, it was not part of the state ARPA, but there was a separate program specifically to aid the recovery and travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation. The state of Vermont received $10.4 million. We've been working very hard to deploy those funds. So on the next slide, you'll see the list of projects that we've been working on. This is so exciting to me that we've been able to do these types of projects that we've never had the resources to do. That includes the economic impact work. We are in the midst of a year-long visitor survey. That is will last throughout the year. We'll have visitor personas and profiles of who comes here, who are they traveling with, what are they interested in, where do they go. All that information will be so valuable to us. We are collecting as much data as we can on accommodations, on wages, on anything around the visitor economy. We are doing a brand study. We have not looked at the Vermont brand in over 20 years. What really are the perceptions out there? What do people think? In more of the strategic planning realm, we have just launched our destination management plan work. We're working with a consultant called Coraggio. They've done this in other states. There's a large focus on destination stewardship. So in our work, we've really kind of moved from destination marketing to destination management to destination stewardship, to really thinking about what is our role in not just providing an amazing experience for our visitors, but how does that support our communities? How does that impact our residents? Making sure that we get that balance right. I will follow with more information, but we actually are going to, part of the launch of this is we're going to have 10 regional tourism forums the week of February 10th. Is our first opportunity to really hear from all folks who are interested in this work, to really, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, what are our priorities for supporting the sector going forward. So I can provide that information. I realize folks will be here, but if you can help get the word out in your communities, like I said, there'll be 10 forums all over the state. That's just the beginning of that work. We just received bids. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet, but we put out a request for proposal for a visitation strategy specifically for BIPOC visitors who might be coming here. That includes an audit of all of our communications work, as well as what positioning and creative might look like for our campaign specific for that priority of ours. We've been able to fund some workforce programs. It's a little out of our lane, but we want to make sure that we use this money to do anything and everything we possibly could to support our sector. So we helped set up a certificate program in hospitality management at the University of Vermont. That registration just opened. First cohorts will be in April and May. That is, again, a certificate program either for folks who want to get into the business or for upskilling. It includes a capstone internship component, so that is a paid internship. Housing is provided if needed. I think we have over 20 different properties who have offered to be part of that internship program. So really looking forward to seeing how many folks.
And who are you coordinating that with, at DOL or with, anyway?
It's run through the University of Vermont. But they've done a lot of outreach. Again, all these programs we can talk more about.
It seems so needed in Johnson and Linden. I hope that state colleges are taking you up by this kind of certificate too.
I mean, there's no limits. We could replicate this more. We're also working with Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance to do some skill building workshops with bike mechanics, trail builders, and ski techs to support the outdoor rec industry. Also working on
we've started on that.
Taking a little next step further. Also doing a program. We have a new contract in place to help local communities thinking about visitor experience, thinking about destination development. A lot of our rural communities, the natural landscape is what they have to work with. So trying to help articulate what is the return on investment for communities to invest in outdoor recreation. What does that look like? What would it take? So putting together a toolkit to help those folks.
And we actually have some infrastructure to help them already in terms of trail associations and
Yeah, exactly. But sort of like, what does it take to either just apply
get
for
them.
funding, maybe it's grant funding or
And get the
otherwise,
market.
right, it's thinking about what are the metrics on that, so.
Tom has a
I
question.
know we're almost out of time, so I'll just make a comment that I hope is on your radar. As growing up in Vermont, I used to go to a lot of shows at Memorial Auditorium. It's now forlorn. Over in Plattsburgh, there is the Crate Civic Center, which is also closed. We have a indoor desert in Vermont right now, and we need a space. So I hope your agency advocates to the University of Vermont trustees that the next president really focus on getting the Heron Center built, because I see that as filling a real need to draw more people from the greater region for shows here in the great state of Vermont, and so that NoahCon can play indoors in the winter time.
Well, there's always the Flint.
It's not big enough. We need something bigger, more auditorium.
Several.
But it's it's a great comment. Thank you. And there's a lot of work to be thinking about. We think about, product development. So if it's, winter outdoor recreation strength, it's not for everybody. What are we thinking about for shoulder seasons, for off seasons when we think?
And what do they do at
about-
night? If they may be here for outdoors in the day, but what do they do at night?
Exactly.
We're out of time, but
Yeah.
Randy, you have a quick question.
Just a quick question. I know we consulted with you and how the Built Industry Study Group was done, 2-3 years ago. In terms of either research or strategic planning industry support, are you doing anything in that area, using or trying to use the film industry, for example, to make Vermont an attractive destination that appears for a lot of people in movies instead of being made in Vancouver?
Yeah. It's definitely still a challenge for us as to how we support that industry. I think we definitely see that as a partnership, both with us and with the Department of Economic Development. I would say that in terms of this destination strategic plan that we're looking at, in addition to the regional forums, we're also doing some thematic forums. Arts and culture is one of them that we have identified as making sure that we really are hearing from folks as to where they see themselves in that future. And I think that's, a sort of a natural kind of next step in terms of what that looks like. So I would say it's definitely still on our minds as how we can be most impactful. And
I'd like to talk further with you about that.
great.
Thank you.
Can I make a few comments?
Yeah, and then we're gonna, and sadly, we're gonna stay.
Just things for the future. I think they tie all of the programs and agencies together. When I think about empty spaces, we do need to talk to historic preservation. I just want to put ACCD on notice. Like, we need to reduce the state barriers to refurbishing historic buildings and just know what our federal requirements are. And that's something that I'd really like us to look at this session. Two, obviously, there's a huge need for hotels. And every time I see something like the Hula Project coming on the horizon, it feels like someone local can say no, and that the state needs to interject in the conversation and say like it's a regional need and how can we help you get to yes. Otherwise, we just don't have enough hotels and we're getting mad at short-term rentals and it's an untenable situation. I hope our branding strategy includes relocation branding, that's day to stay kind of stuff, but really just what is our welcome home brand like Maine, which we talked about at the watching place. And finally, I just want to say that you are our chief marketer.
Yeah.
And as I looked at your slides, it helped me feel like you could be key to helping other legislators understand the problems that could occur with the data privacy bill, and that hurting small dollar, high propensity targeted branding hurts our online companies that are a huge part of our state brand and our tourism. So I just really want us to be thinking like our state marketers about what our businesses have to think of. And last year's data privacy bill would have made that extremely difficult for businesses to do the same thing you do to reach people about what's exciting and worth investing in Vermont.
Fair point.
And as we address that issue, we will have you in, and the House Congress will, because they're taking it up for.
Yeah.
Better have you back. We will have you back.
I just want to mention before I leave, if you have this packet, there is information on the Think Vermont Grow program, which is about relocation and retention. So some of that is in your packet. You can come back and talk about more.
Are we reinstituting something like Stay to Stay?
Well, basically that's the Grow program has replaced that. So we are now giving, I don't know if you know, but we now have 13 grant recipients all over the state. We provide funding for them. It was in base funding 2 years ago, so we're able to continue this program. We have both a relocation track, so anyone who's interested in moving to Vermont, if they get that lead through Think Vermont, we're able to push those leads down to local level. they're connected with, whether either it's the RDC or the development organization, whoever the grant recipient is in that region, to be able to continue that one-on level work to make sure that transition is successful. If they choose to move here. And then we also have grant recipients who are working on retention and making sure that once folks move here, that they're doing outreach activities and so forth, so that people feel welcome and part of their communities.
So that's
And so forth. Yeah.
Is that a GROW program?
It's the GROW program, exactly. Grants for relocation and outreach work. And so in the
That
packet,
makes us
there
very
is-
happy.
there's a sales funnel you'll see in here that shows some of the leads we've had so far. There's also, we have not put paid marketing behind that because we're setting up the infrastructure for those grant recipients. We are about to launch a paid campaign this quarter, which will help get more leads into that.
Which will really drive people to
Exactly.
using it. Great.
So
So that-
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Brochure, where's it just?
it's,
At the
so
end.
these are all our GROW grant recipients. Basic sales funnel. People are coming from all over the country. They are settling. There's a big red in Rutland.
Are they
Thanks to the
staying?
great-
And the question, and the
Are they
longitudinal
staying?
piece of this is, are they staying?
Rutland's done a great work with their program, so a lot of folks are there. Preliminary ideas for our campaign. So in your packet, there's more on the GROW program.
Absolutely. Rutland actually did the first day to stay, I think.
They were part of the original program, part of the original, the real
It was very
Rutland.
successful.
Folks are amazing. I'm sure they would love to talk to you about their work.
Thank you, ACCD. We are so grateful.